Hello everyone, my name is Paulo Alves and on this video I'm gonna create the 3 last screens of our Real Delivery app using React Native. And here in this video I'm gonna use some different React Native components that we haven't used or even talked about before, and the main one is gonna be the flat list, which is used for showing huge amounts of data. So please subscribe to the channel if you wanna follow the development of this app, but first let me just show you what we are gonna build on this video. The first screen we are going to develop is the screen where the user will enter the source and the destination or destinations of that delivery. On the second screen, the user will be able to see the details of the delivery that the user just created or some delivery the user created some time ago. And the third screen will show a list with all the deliveries the user has already requested. So let's go to the code. So let's get started by creating our source and destination screen. To do this, we go to app/screens and let's create a new folder called address. This folder will contain all the code necessary for this screen to work. Now I will create a file on it called address.screen.tsx. This file will contain all the code of our address screen. I start importing the React and then I create a constant called address screen, and this constant is a function which will return me the code of the page. As with all our pages, I'm going to start by adding the safe area view and then I'm going to create a title. This title will have the text address screen, just for us to see that the screen is actually being shown on our emulator. Let's export the address screen so it's visible to the other files. I'll save it, I'll come to the app.tsx file and I'm going to reference this address screen. After that, I'll save it and let's see that it's showing the address screen here on our emulator. The first thing that I'm going to add here to our address screen is our header component. And this header component will have the title of address. It will also have a back button. When I save, we can see it here. What this screen needs now are the input fields of the origin and destinations. So let's add these fields to our component. I will use the text input component from the React Native paper and now inform that the text input has the text origin. Now let's add the destination field. I'll do the same thing and inform it has the label destination. When I save it, these two fields will show up on my screen. I want these input fields to have some spacing in relation to the edges of the phone. I don't like when they are attached to the edges of it, and to do this I have to add a style file to our component. This style file will be called address_style.ts, and as we always do in our style files, I'm going to start by exporting a constant called address_style that will receive a style sheet that will be created with the following elements. I'm going to create a horizontal margin element here because that's exactly what I want to add to our fields, right? And then I will inform that our horizontal margin will be of 10. I'll save this style and I'll come back to our screen. What I'm going to do now to not add this style to both fields is to create a view, and this view will be our container that will contain these two fields, and then what I'm going to do is simply add the style to our view. I'll save it and now we will see that it will look the way I wanted. On this address screen, our user can add multiple destinations. We will always have one origin only, but we can have multiple destinations. So what we are going to do now is to add the button to add a new destination. To do that, I come to the code and I'm going to create a new container. Inside this container, I'm going to create a button from the React Native paper. It will have a plus icon and then I'll just close this button. Save it and we'll see how it looks on the screen. We can see in the emulator that it is in the middle of the screen, but I want it to be on the right side of the screen. I imagine you already know how it's done, right? We come to our styles file and let's add a new property. I'll call this property button icon add. This property will have an absolute position and then I'll inform that the right side will be -20 because I want this button near to the right side, but a little bit far from the edge, like around here. And I'm also going to add a top of 2. We'll see the result of this when I save it and put the style on that button. I'll add it, save the code, and let's see how it turned out. Great. It's here on the right side, but I want it to have a larger size because this button is too small, right? For this, again, we go to our style file and let's create the button icon add label style, which is the style of the label. I'm going to inform its font size is going to be 30. I'll save it, go back to the screen, and I'll inform the label style will be the property that we just created. When I save it, we'll see that it's much better now. What we need to do now for this screen is to add a button the user will be able to click after the user selected all the addresses for that delivery. This button will have a contained mode because I wanted to get a lot of attention. I don't want the text to be in capital letters, so I'll put uppercase equal to false, and then I'll inform that the text inside of it is ready. Let's save it and see how it turned out. We can see in the emulator that the confirm button is above the add button. Also, it is very attached to the edges of the screen. What we need to do now is to add a new style to our style file. I'll create a new ready button style property and it will have the margin of 10. I'm going to put a top margin of 80 so it will be lowered. I'll put a height of 50 and I'll put also a vertical spacing of 3. Let's save it and put it here on the screen button. To do this, I put on the button the style that we just created. Let's see how it turned out. Much better, right? Now I think this text here should be bigger. To do this, we'll create a new property called ready button label style. And then I'll inform the font size of it will be 18. And now let's add the style of this label. Label style equal to ready button label style. Let's see how it looks. What we need to do now is to simulate how this screen will behave if we have more than one destination field. In this case, I also have to add a remove destination button on each one of the destinations. This remove destination button should only appear when we have more than one destination. What I'll need first is a constant that I'll use to simulate my destinations, right? Simulate that I have more than one destination. So I'm going to inform I have a numeric array, and with that I can inform I have two destinations. And the idea of this numeric array is that I'll be able to iterate over the elements of this array and create the input components. To be able to do this, I have to come here and create a destinations.map. This .map is informing that I'm going to iterate over our destinations. So as properties, I'll have our destination, which for now is a number, and I'll also have an index, which is another number. This code will return exactly this text input. Let's indent it, save it, and see that now two destination fields are showing up. Something we should always do in these components that are the result of an iteration, such as this, is to add a key to it, because then the React Native will be able to distinguish better those components. To do that, I'll inform that the key here is going to be destination and the index of that element. So in this case, I would have destination 0 and destination 1. And what we have to do now is to add our remove destination button. This button has to be on each of the destinations and show up in case we have more than one destination. What we have to do for now is to inform that to the right of our text input, I'm going to add a component, and in this case, our component will be the text input icon of React Native Paper. I'll inform that this component will have a close icon, which is the remove icon, showing now on our screen. Alright, what we have to do now is to add a style on this remove button so that it looks like the theme app, I mean purple. To do this, I come to our style file, I'll create a new style called button icon remove. This style will have a color that comes from our app theme. I'll save it and I will declare on our screen that the color of this icon will be the color that we just added to our address style.color. I'm going to save it and we can see that the button turned purple. Another thing I think would be cool is this button to have less visibility and to be smaller. So what I'm going to add here is a 0.7 opacity, and I will declare also that we are using this style. I will also inform here that address style.button icon remove. We can see now that the button is a little bit less visible. The only thing missing here is to only show this remove button if we have more than one destination. If I remove the second element of this array, we'll see our destination field still has the remove button on it. To do this is very simple. I come back to our screen, I'll first change the destination in the singular to plural destinations, and I'll add a ternary asking if destinations.length is greater than 1. Then I'll show the remove button. If not, I'll just return null. Let's save it and now see that the button is removed. If I add one more element to our array, we'll see that the button will be there. And it's important to remember that all those screen actions will be implemented in a future moment. What I want to do now is simply the design of the screens to be able to show it as soon as possible to my client how the development of the app is going. Okay, we have finished the address screen. Now let's go to our second screen, which is the screen that shows the delivery details. To do that, I come to our code and I'm going to create a new folder in app/screens called delivery. That delivery folder will contain a file called delivery.screen.tsx, which is the file that will contain our delivery page code. First of all, as usual, I will import React and then I'm going to create a constant called delivery screen, which is a function, and this function will return the code of our screen. We always start with the safe area view and then I'll create a titled delivery screen just for us to show that our component really is on the emulator. I'll export our component so it's visible to all the other files. I'll save it and then we come to the app.tsx file and change it from address screen to delivery screen. As soon as I save it, we can go back to the emulator and see our delivery screen is being shown. So let's add the header to that delivery screen, right? I'm going to use my header component, which I already created before. I'll inform that the title will be delivery details, and I will inform that it will also have a return button. I'll close this and we'll see that the header is appearing on our screen. What I will do now is to add a view component and I will also add the map view. In this screen, I also want to show the map, so I'll just add it the same way I added in our home screen. Let's now close the map view and import that view container as well. If you do not understand what I just did on this part of the code, you can go back to the previous video where I created the home screen and then I'll explain everything that's happening here. If I save this, we'll continue to see that the map is not being shown on our screen. And that happened because the safe area view, and map view are not taking up the entire space of the screen, actually any space at all. To solve this, I will create our delivery.style.ts file. This file will export a constant called delivery style that will receive a style sheet that will be created with the following properties. I'm going to create a flex and I'm going to say that this flex has a flex 1. I'll save it and add this property to our screen. At Safe Area View, I'll inform that the style will be flex, and then I'll do this also for our view and for our map view. I'll just copy and paste it to make it easier. When I save it, the map will be shown on our screen. Our next step is to create a card that will contain the information of this delivery, like the date and value of it. We use the card component of the React Native paper. This component will have a title, and the title will be a date. And what I'm going to add to the title of this card is also a component on the right side of it. To do this, I'll create the right property. I'm going to add the text component that will have the value of 30 monies. Now what I need is to close our card title and then I'll save it and let's see how it looks on the screen. Alright, the title is down here on the card. What I want to show now are some information about the delivery person who made or who is making this delivery. For this, we will add a new component from our card called card content. This component also comes from the React Native paper and it will have a list.item inside of it. This list.item will have the title that will be the name of the delivery person. I'll put my name, I'll also put a description for this item, which in this case will be 53 deliveries, and I'll also inform that on the left side of it I want to have a component. This component will be the image of the delivery person, its picture. For that, I'm going to use an avatar.image from the React Native paper. I'll inform that the image has a size of 52, and now what I need is to inform what is the source of this image. This source will be an object that has a property called URI, which is the link to the image. I already have copied the link of an image, so let's use this link, and what I have to do now is to close our list.item. One thing I forgot was to close our avatar component. I'll save it and let's see how it looks on the screen. It looks pretty good, and finally what we have to add here are the source and destination of the delivery. So let's again create a list.item. First we will have origin as the title because it's our origin field. For the description of it, I will say it is origin street and I'll put the number so it's our address. I'll also inform that on the right side I'll have an icon. For this, I will use our list.icon and I'll inform that the icon that we are using is the flag outline icon. I'll save it and let's see how it turned out. Good. To add our destination field will be something very similar, so I'll just copy and paste it, change that text from origin to destination, and instead of the outline, I'm going to use the checkered icon. Let's save it and see how it turned out. We need to change some small details for this screen to become better. What I want to change is only this top part, so it is purple. I think the rest of the screen is pretty acceptable. So for that, we go to our style file and let's create some more properties. As I want to modify the card title, I will create a card title and I will inform that its color is that color of our theme, theme.color.primary. I also want to change the price style, so let's add the property price. Let's set its color also to the color of our theme. I will inform that the font size is 16, that this font will be bold, and I'll add a margin at the end of this component, a margin of 15. Now let's save this and add this field to our screen, first in the title, and now inform that its style will be the style I just created, the delivery style.card title. Well, actually this is title style, not the style. Now I'm going to add the style to our price. Okay, let's save it and see how it got. What we are going to do now is to develop the last screen of our application, which is the screen showing the deliveries list that the customer has already requested. For that, I come to app/screen, I'm going to create a new folder called deliveries, and inside this folder I'm going to create a file called deliveries.screen.tsx. As we already know, the first thing we do is to import the React, then I'll create a constant called deliveries_screen, and this constant is a function that will return the code of the page. We start the code with the save area view component, and I'm going to put a title deliveries_screen to show that we really have this screen on our emulator. Now I have to export the deliveries screen for our app.tsx to be able to see it. I go to the app.tsx file and I use this deliveries screen. After saving it, we can see it showing up on our emulator. Let's close all the files except this one, so it becomes easier to see, and let's add the header component. It will have a title of My Deliveries, and I'll inform it also has a back button. I'm going to close it and let's see how it's being shown on the screen. Here on this screen, I will show a list of cards containing some information about each delivery. I want this card to show an image with the source and destinations of that delivery. So let's add the card component of the React Native paper. I want this card to have the image of the map with the origin and the destinations. So for that, I will use the card.cover component, and I will inform that the source of this card.cover will be an object which will have the following URI. I already have it here copied to my clipboard, so let's use this URI. Now I'm going to close our card.cover, let's save it and see how it looks in the emulator. Cool, now let's show some details about this delivery. To do that, I'm going to add the card component of the React Native paper. I'll inform the title of this component will be equal to some fake date. I'll inform that the subtitle will be the delivery person name, and I'll inform that on the right side we'll have the following component. It will be a text component that will inform the price of that delivery. So let's put 30 monies again here. Now I'm going to close this card title and let's see how it looks on the screen. As you must be imagining already, what I'm going to do now is to create our style file to make this screen look a bit nicer. So I'll create the deliveries.style.ts. On this file, I will export a constant called deliveryStyle, and this constant will receive a style sheet that will be created with the following properties. First, I want to add a margin to the card because it's touching the edges of the phone and I don't like it, as you already know. Another thing that I would like is if we had a top border informing the status of that delivery. I mean, if it's happening now, if it's already finished, if it was cancelled or something like that. For this, we'll create a property called card status. I'll inform that it has a top border size of 3, and I'm going to inform that this top border will have the color yellow for now. So let's save it and add these properties to our card. So I come to the card and I'm going to add the property style. What I'm going to add in this field style are those two properties that we just created. To be able to do this, I'm going to create an object, and in this object, I'm going to break those two properties on card property and status property. What this line is doing is to take the values of both the card and the card status, and it will merge everything into one object. When I save it, we'll see the change on our screen. Now let's do some other small changes. What I want is that the card title to have the color of our theme. So here we go, theme.colors.primary. And what I also want to change is that price. I want it also to have the color of our theme. Another thing I want is its font to be 16. I want it to be bold, and I'm going to add a margin to the end of 15. Let's save it and add these properties first to the title. So I put title style to the property we just created in the delivery style. In the same way for the price, I will add a style and use that property we created for the price. I'll save it and let's see that for sure it looks better now. But this is going to be a list of deliveries, right? It won't be just one delivery. So let's simulate this list by creating also a constant called deliveries, which will be an array of numbers, and I will inform I have two elements in this array. And notice that in our previous screen, I just made a loop on an array of deliveries that I created there. What we are going to do here is something different. For this type of list that can be a very long list, we shouldn't just do what we did before. We use another component called flatlist. This flatlist draws on the screen only the components that are actually showing up on the screen. This helps us with the performance of the application, as, for example, if I have 100 deliveries, I don't need to draw on the screen those 100 deliveries. I can draw only the 3 deliveries that are actually showing on the screen, right? I mean, this flatlist component will draw on the screen only what is visible on the screen. So let's add to our code the flatlist. Then I'll inform that its information will come from our constant called deliveries. On the flatlist, we have to inform this property called key extractor because this property is going to create the key that we used on the previous screen. Do you remember that in the previous screen I said that React Native requires that we put a key for each element we have inside an array? So this key extractor will do that. It will generate the key for each one of the elements that we will create inside of this flat list. So I inform it's a deliveries index. I mean, the first element will be deliveries 0, then we'll have deliveries 1, then we'll have deliveries n. The next property that we are going to add to this flat list will inform how the flat list will draw these items on the screen. I inform that our flat list will receive the item which is being drawn as a parameter and the index. Notice that the item will come from these deliveries. Now let's draw our component. To do this, I'll cut and paste the card component. When I save it, we can see that now we have a list of elements. This image here showing up broken because it's some bug in the emulator and I don't know what it is, so let's just leave it like this. To show that this is really a list with our array of deliveries, let's remove one element of it. And now I'm going to add 2 more elements and we'll see that they're all showing up. And that was it for today. We just created the 3 last screens of our delivery app and now we are kind of ready to show it to our client. Of course, we still don't have the navigation part and the actions involved with this app, but at least now we have something that we can present to our client as soon as possible. And on the next video, we're going to create this navigation part of the app. So after clicking on the login button, let's say, we are going to be redirected to the home screen. And clicking on the add new delivery, we are going to be redirected to the new delivery screen. And for sure, after that, I'll feel ready to build the app and send the first version to our client. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel in case you're still not subscribed and you want to follow the development of this real app using React Native. Share the video with your dev friends and see you on the next video.